this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It just seems to me, in general here, writ large, if you abide by the immigration laws, stop all this sanctuary city business, that's the most affordable thing possible. You save, I look at what's happened in New York.
You know, sanctuary cities are only good for people. It's sanctuary for criminals, okay? They are protecting criminals.
You're listening to the 47 Morning Update with Ben Ferguson.
Good Thursday morning. Nice to have you with us on the 47 Morning Update, and we've got a big story for you. Gavin Newsom, you know, the governor of California. Well, he's now spent more than $1 billion to import more than 400,000 illegal immigrants to replace American citizens. Where did all that money go? We have the receipts. It's the 47 Morning Update, and it starts right now.
Story number one.
All right, I want to just ask you a question real quick. How mad would you be if you knew that your tax dollars were being spent to import illegal immigrants? I'm asking that question because we're now finding out that that is exactly what happened in California. California Governor Gavin Newsom, we're now being told, covertly spent not 1 million, not 10 million, not even 50 million, not even 100 million, not even 500 million. He spent $1 billion importing 400,000 migrants from poor countries to serve the state's Democratic political machine. This, according to data provided by the Manhattan Institute in New York. Let me just read for you from what we've learned. Quote, since Newsom took office, California has granted massive contracts to migrant-related services. This is also what you could describe as a kickback to his donors and supporters. More than $250 million alone went to the Catholic Charities, $85 million to Jewish Family Services, $12 million to the Centro Legal de la Raza, whatever that is, and $23 million to the Immigration Institute of the Bay Area. That's just some of the biggest people that got checks. Now, the funding is also in addition to California's share of massive, and this is where your tax dollars, no matter where you're listening right now, matter the most. They have a massive federal funding that's been directed, that's your tax dollars, by then President Joe Biden's pro-immigration border chief, Alejandro Mayorkas. The state's Democratic government also steered $110 million to the major Latino political machine known as the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights Los Angeles. That organization can be described as a one-stop activist machine with the ability to not only produce, and I'm not joking, political propaganda, then engage in legal action, and most importantly, get people into the streets. The group coordinates the LA Rapid Response Network, which also tracks ICE raids and where ICE agents are, and then takes direct action, they say, to shut down detention centers. That's their own words. Now, during the wave of fake protests in LA, this organization and their activists agitated on social media, led a street protest, and then they were the ones that called for what spread as the, quote, summer of resistance. All of this was not organic. All of this was paid for, and much of it with your tax dollars. Now, at the height of the unrest, we're also learning this. The executive director of this Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights Los Angeles, Angelica Sales, spoke at a street protest telling crowds that ICE agents were conducting a militarized siege against illegal migrants, saying, quote, we are going to stop Trump's terror campaign against our community. We will not stop marching. We will not stop fighting. The article is titled, quote, How Gavin Newsom Subsidized the Migrant Invasion, where all of this is being exposed. I hope you'll download it and read it. Again, put it into Google. How Gavin Newsom Subsidized the Migrant Invasion. It also concluded in the report that the, quote, 2 million illegal migrants in California are pawns, merely instruments of activist class that would like to see America burn, quote unquote. Now, Newsom's support for the migration is better understood as the self-serving operation of California's Democratic political machine. And this is why the money was being spent the way that it was. They're using the plans that have been used in New York City, in Boston, in Denver, in Minneapolis. California's Democratic machine wants more low-wage migrants because the migrants serve as customers for the state's education and welfare agencies. In time, the multi-ethnic migrant customers become clients and beneficiaries, and then, most importantly to them, modern-day slaves, dependents of the multi-ethnic machine that the Democratic Party has set up. And then they eventually will repay that machine, the Democrats, with their votes. And gradually they are expected to then get citizenship, right? To be naturalized. It's all a part of the overall plan. But now we're witnessing just how much money it's costing you. Now, the process in California is not any different from what the Irish political machine that emerged in Chicago and Boston and New York during the late 1800s did. You remember the saying, history repeats itself? Well, it literally is right now in front of us in real time. You go back then and you study that story. New York's Tammany Hall, for example, gained power as many Irish migrants fled the famine and then lost power when the Americans elected a Congress to block migration in the 1920s. Now, Newsom's migrant clients also serve as business allies as well, because Democrats claim they want a, quote, living wage, but they want to pay a low-wage worker instead of an American worker. Welfare-aided customers, they're fine with that because it also brings them new consumers. And these are also individuals that will rent their slums, their apartments, because many of them are apartment-sharing renters. Let me just give you one example. In March, missionlocal.org reported that San Francisco had to inflate real estate values in the state. Why did this happen? Well, I'll give you another example of that. Camelo, 43, was looking for a place to live for almost 6 months after arriving in the United States of America 3 years ago. And more in the article, it says they finally found his current room through a friend of friends of his nephew. Carmelo works at a neighborhood grocery store on 16th Street. He was stacking cabbages on the shelf and pulling bad-looking mushrooms out of the bin as he spoke to the Mission Local about finding housing and paying rent in San Francisco. The undocumented immigrant, we call them an illegal immigrant, arrived 3 years ago from the Yucatan. He lives in an apartment with 3 others, his 25-year-old son and 2 of his nephews. They pay $2,950 total. Here we are. There isn't another option, Camelo said in Spanish. One immigrant family from El Salvador crammed not 1, not 2, not 5, but 15 people into a 2-bedroom unit in the Excelsior neighborhood during the pandemic. The migrants also serve the state's Democratic-leading prosperous class with low-cost services such as manicures, gardening, and cheap car washes. I wish I was joking, but this is actually why the Democrats are taking advantage of them. Of course, the mass inflow of wage-cutting, rent-spiking, Democrat-voting illegal immigrants also pushes ordinary, hardworking Americans out of the Democrats' amnesty zones and towards southern and midwestern cities and states with lower taxes and family-friendly laws. The elite's widespread use of illegal migration against ordinary Americans is often protected by the Democrats, and they're dubbed, you guessed it, sanctuary cities. Now, in these cities, in these zones, Democrats and even some GOP politicians are barring police enforcement of popular migration-related labor laws, and also try to block the Democratic implementation of President Donald Trump's 2024 popular mandate. This is how the Democrats are going to move forward. Take your money, as much of it as they can, and give it to illegal immigrants. Communist Zohan Mandani doubling down on sanctuary policies protecting criminal illegals. Just last week, he had this to say.
First and foremost, I'm going to follow up with my team around what CUNY policies are and what they need to be. I think we've seen a number of times where we are proud of the sanctuary city policies we have in New York City, and we also want to be clear that, and I'll say this as the mayor, I do not want a future of this city where we learn how to deal with ICE. I believe that ICE should be abolished. And I've said this both publicly and privately, and I've even told the president directly that I believe that ICE raids are cruel and inhumane. And I think that they don't do anything to serve in the stated public interest of public safety.
So there you have it. Follow the money. Time after time, this is what we are seeing. Democratic policies not only don't work, but even nearly 54,000, we're now hearing, Los Angeles County residents fled in a single year. Why? Because they can't afford the rent, they can't afford to deal with the crime, and they can't afford to work for next to nothing, competing with illegal aliens and what they're willing to make and live on top of each other in the housing. Here's just one example of how Fox Business described the massive exodus, not from California, but 54,000 a year from Los Angeles County alone.
The exodus continues. We've got shocking new figures showing Los Angeles losing tens of thousands of residents, one of the biggest population drops in the nation. Experts pointing to soaring costs, shrinking opportunity, and policy failures driving people out.
Eventually, that system collapses because the problem with socialism is you run out of other people's money. So if that system collapses, if enough people leave, and I know we're just talking about LA, but then eventually these states, that system can't support itself because there isn't the tax base to support all of the public funds that you want.
I hate to say it, but to your point, they make all these promises. If you heard what Zohran Mamdani said, it's going to be free this, free that, free this. I'm going to take care of everyone. I'm going to tax the rich. Don't you worry about it. You stay right where you are. Well, guess what? How's that working out? The state's not going to raise income taxes on the wealthy. It's an election year. Kathy Hochul, she'll do it in January if she gets reelected, but she's not going to do it now. And so Mamdani's been forced to now raid the reserve fund. How do people feel about that? So I hate to say it, but you really elections matter. And you have to pay attention. Whether or not you get involved in politics, you have to understand what's going on in politics. You recognize the decision you make has consequences.
And that decision is costing you literally more than $1 billion to import 400,000 extra illegal immigrants into California alone. This is how you destroy a country from within. And Gavin Newsom is clearly going full speed ahead to replace you with an illegal immigrant.
Thank you for listening to the 47 Morning Update with Ben Ferguson. Please make sure you hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. And for more in-depth news, also subscribe to the Ben Ferguson podcast, and we will see you back here tomorrow.